Now, to pick up where we left off on filing statuses, let's pick up with qualifying widower with dependent child. Now, a widow or widower with one or more dependent children may be able to use the widower or widow with dependent child filing status. This filing status yields a low tax amount as married filing jointly and is available for only 2 years following the year of the spouse's death. Now, this may be an uncomfortable subject to discuss with your client, but you must know. Now, the qualifying criteria goes as follows. Not have remarried before the end of the tax year. Have been eligible to file a joint return for the year the spouse died. It doesn't matter if the joint return was actually filed. Have a child, stepchild, or adopted child who qualifies the taxpayer's qualifying child for the year. Have furnished over half the cost of keeping up the child's home for the entire year. An adopted child is a child placed with the taxpayer by an authorized placement agency for legal adoption. Now, the following table summarizes all of the following status. Let's start with single. The conditions: never married, no dependents, or never married with dependents. Married, living together or apart, as of, there's that date again, the 31st. Or separated, not legally, with dependents. Widowed, before the first of the year, and didn't remarry the next year, no dependents. Divorced, legally separated, must have no dependents, or with dependents, with certain conditions applying. Then separated, but not legally, living apart as of the 31st, and the following other conditions. Both spouses file separate tax returns. Taxpayers lived apart for the last 6 months of 2010. Paid more than 50% to maintain a home in 2010. A home was the main home for child more than 6 months in 2010. Either the spouse can be claimed, or either spouse can claim the child as a dependent. Now, note on the side, separated, not legally, you have that option for head of household, married jointly, or married filing single. Head of household, single. QW, qualified widower. Again, head of household, qualified widower. Married joint, single. Head of household, married joint, married filing single. Head of household, and single. Now, a question you may get these days, depending on where you are: what filing status do married couples of the same sex use? At this time, federal law does not recognize same-sex marriages. So a same-sex couple cannot file a joint federal tax return. They must use the single filing status. Now, since there are a few states that do recognize same-sex marriages, if that couple fully resides in the state that recognizes same-sex marriages, they may be able to file their state tax return using a married filing status. And again, the state tax return, not the federal. Now, after a spouse's death, in the year of a taxpayer's death, and the spouse does not remarry, he or she can use either married filing jointly or married filing separately. Claim an exemption for the deceased spouse. Now, for the first and second years after the spouse's death, the widowed taxpayer with dependent children may no longer claim an exemption for the deceased spouse, can file as a widower or with dependent child unless the taxpayer remarries. Now, after the second year following the year of the death, the widowed taxpayer may no longer use the widower filing status. However, they might qualify for head of household filing status. Note the table below. Now, lastly in this section, how does getting remarried affect Social Security benefits? Taxpayers that were receiving spousal benefits based on their former spouse's work will generally lose those benefits upon remarriage. However, if the taxpayer was over 60 when she remarried or 50 and disabled, her eligibility for the spousal benefits under her first spouse's work record remains intact. For widows under age 60 or disabled and under age 50, remarriage ends any benefits based on the record of their deceased spouse. Remarried taxpayers can receive spousal benefits under the new marriage if she is eligible for a higher allowance through her new spouse. Remarried taxpayers who would receive higher benefits based on their own work record can receive those benefits. For working spouses during the first marriage, a remarriage does not change the benefits paid to either the new spouse or the ex-spouse.